උසස් විහිදෙන ජීවිතේ.
මැද්ද රට නගන ජන පෞර. Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. Now then, amongst a sea of troubles and so on and so forth, there appears to be a little glimmer of hope when it comes to reconciliation and working across different political ideologies and even between across the communities, I suppose. And on that note, we've got here with us as our guest this evening the spokesperson of the TNA, Mr. M.A.Sumanthiran, who's also, of course, a legal eagle. A very good evening to you, Mr. Sumanthiran.
Good evening.
And now then, I am reading out a little bit of what the President's statement today. He said, irrespective of ethnicity, religious differences, etc., I will serve equally all the citizens of this country. Really? But this is the President who, soon after he was elected, reminded anyone who cared to listen to him, and a lot of people did because he was just elected President, he said that he was elected by the Sinhalese people, the majority.
Yeah, not only soon after he was elected, I think he repeated that a couple of times.
Yeah.
Even recently sometime. But today he told us that again, that although he was elected by the Sinhala people mostly, that he has always said that he is president of everyone, and that he will treat everybody equally, and that this process is very important, and so on.
Did you get the feeling that he was just being generous, forgetting that the Constitution of our country recognizes that everybody in this country is equal?
Yeah, of course, he doesn't have to tell us that.
Yeah.
Legally that is so, but on the ground that is not so. And that is why we have the ethnic strife. That is why we need reconciliation. That is why we need a political solution. So I'm just telling you what he said. That's all.
Okay. And I suppose the next question, the most obvious question is, do you trust him?
Well, when one commences a dialogue with another, and the third person asks a question, do you trust that person with whom you have just started a dialogue? What do you think I should give as an answer?
Well, I don't know. You could
Well,
say...
we have just started a dialogue.
Yeah.
Let's wait and see.
It's just that I don't mean to be pessimistic, but you know, if you were having this dialogue with some other political firm, we might be able to look at it with wide-angle lenses. But when it comes to this particular president with the previous history, then that's why the sort of antennas are up. And
see, we have a history in this country where everyone has let us down at some point or the other. Given promises not kept. Starting from SWRD Bandaranaike, who even signed a pact and then put his hands up and said, well, I can't implement it. Dudley Seranayake, who people respect as a decent gentleman, did the same to the Dudley Chelwa Pact. After 3 years of collaborating with him, he said, I'm sorry, I cannot implement it. So we've had this long list of people who have done that. So what's another person?
I see. So it's almost like one of those punching bags. You're used to being punched by different.
Not therefore, I'm not saying that therefore we are giving ourselves to be punched like that.
No.
We have learned from those experiences. But whoever who is in the seat of power, who is in the seat of office, it is with that person that we must negotiate. And so we shouldn't ever be blamed for refusing to talk. We are all ever ready to talk to anyone, because we are confident.
In furtherance of your.
In furtherance of, because we are confident that what we are seeking is justice, is a reasonable solution. It's not anything outrageous. Yes, true. For some time our people asked for a separate state, but we have come away from that. We have articulated very clearly that we are for a solution within a united, undivided country.
Yes, I saw that statement with an undivided country and so on. In practice, in practical terms, Mr. Sumanthiran, how will that work? How do you foresee that working?
So, we are not asking for anything that one doesn't find anywhere else in the world. These arrangements are plenty that you can find in the United States of America, the other in Australia, the whole of Europe, even in India. Power sharing arrangements are there in every country practically, particularly countries that have stayed united and been strong. You find power sharing arrangements. So it's something like that that we are asking for.
And coming back to your meeting with the President today, what have there been any suggestions of an economic nature from your party to the President, which will result in hopefully improving the so-called dollar crisis in the next, say, 12 months?
Well, there is there has been this call from us even before this government came into office, during the last government, that there must be a special fund allocated, set apart to revive the economy of the war devastated areas. That's the north and the east. During the time Mr. Mangala Samaravira was finance minister, he did in fact set up such a fund and called it Palmera Fund, and take some steps to move that forward. So it's the same proposition that we made today, that they set up a special development fund for the north and east, the war devastated areas, for the recovery of its economy. And now, in the context where the country has fallen into this severe crisis, unprecedented crisis, that can be a catalyst to revive the economy of the whole country also. There are many models in the world where some areas are demarcated and economic activity and foreign investments come in there in a special way that helps the whole of the rest of the country as well. So that's a kind of model that we envisage, and we said you can do that. And we talked about diaspora investment 2 days ago at the all-party conference, and we said, well, we have offered to be a bridge between the diaspora and the Sri Lankan state. Of course, the diaspora is not just going to come and dump their money here. They'll want security for their investment. They will want to do it in the north and the east. They will want to see a political solution happening first,
because they'd want to safeguard their
investments. So now that is known. So the President's response to that was, yes, I will set up a special development fund, and the government will do everything to attract diaspora investment. Now, what that everything would entail is a matter that they have to work out. We can advise them what that is. But I can say with certainty a permanent political solution that satisfies the Tamil people of this country will be a sine qua non.
And the why can't the whole, well, no, first of all, who's going to be in charge of this special?
No, we haven't discussed the modalities of this fund.
Okay.
We've only
You were agreed in principle.
in principle that there should be such a fund.
Right. And Mr. Sumanthiran, for long I've often wondered why, because of the devastation of the war years, why can't the former conflict areas be declared as one big free economic zone?
Yeah, that's the whole idea that we are also mooting now. That should have been done, but of course the diaspora, the Tamil diaspora, for them to have confidence to bring their hard-earned monies,
Yeah.
They would naturally want a decent political solution first. So now that we have started discussions about a political solution, about a new constitution, it's up to the government to make it happen, and if they make it happen, sure enough there will be a renewed confidence in this country and funds will flow in.
It's a bit amazing that the ruling party are actually conducive to having these talks with you, because at an election time it appears to me that it would be rather unlikely that the TNA would support this the SLPP.
It all depends on what they deliver now. Now these 4 issues that we identified, which the President said he can undertake to do immediately, we will see whether that happens in the next month or 2 before we sit down again. So these are the barometers. Elections are, sometime later. There are no elections in the offing anytime soon. So it depends on how they perform. There are people will tend to vote.
And Mr. Sumanthiran, can we ask, thank you for your questions, by the way, SMS 0772 300 305. It says here, I suppose this is in relation to the all-party conference. Why couldn't they have had this conference in Parliament? Why couldn't it have been a parliamentary session?
Well, it could have been. This is the government is deciding to do it the way they want to do it. Ideally, I also agree that this should have been in Parliament, particularly matter that involves public finances. Parliament should have total control of public finances. So from that perspective, that's a valid question. But then this is what they did. I mean, we did not make those decisions.
Again, this is a statement, I think, from one of our viewers. God help you, Mr. Sumanthiran, in your endeavours. Please don't let Basil or Cabral have anything to do with investments coming from the diaspora.
Well, thank you for that caution.
Now then, so does it bother you that it's not in Parliament and it's it's just anywhere else?
Well, this consultation with all parties should have happened a year or 2 ago, when it was known that we were going to hit this kind of problem. Everybody knew it. We were running low on our reserves. There was no foreign exchange coming in, and so on. And the government was warned repeatedly. In fact, in January and February this year, almost at the 11th hour, I convened some members of Parliament, party leaders, and we had 2 consultations, and we made our position known, because there was no, we couldn't even do it in Parliament in the finance committees, because the chairs were the government chairs. But those chairs came and participated in the meeting outside. But they knew the gravity of the situation. So true, the government should have done more, government should have done differently, government should have taken steps long before this stage, but they did not do. But from our perspective, we decided that we will still go for the meeting. See, this is no time to be pointing fingers at each other. We did point fingers. We do that. We do say that the government was remiss in doing all of these things, but we can't stop there, because this is far too important. This is a matter of life and death for ourselves too, economically speaking, right? So for our people, particularly the poor in this country, and so we can't be saying, oh, the government should have done that, it's their responsibility. You know, we are not responsible. We are also representatives of the people, and in an hour like this, we thought we must act responsibly in whatever way there was a space to give advice, to act together, then we must do that.
And on that note, let's go for a short break and take a peek at this evening's headlines from the News First Primetime News team. We'll see you on the other side of the break, shall we?
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
TV1 රැස්වීදෙන ජීවිතේ.
Will the finance minister's Malvana case continue? Court order to be delivered on the 13th of May. Take them back. A request to America. Tensions run high in gas queue. Ranil Wickremesinghe at Hyde Park. Will there be a 10-hour power cut? Train operations halted
TV1 රැස්වීදෙන ජීවිතේ.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. We are in conversation with Mr. M.A.Sumanthiran, who is of course the spokesperson for the TNA. Mr. Sumanthiran, you know this invitation to all party and all this business, it's suspiciously close to the help we've got from India in recent weeks. Do you think there's some Indian pressure going on there, and the old man wants us to, all of you, to play ball
Not
with
the
him?
APC. I don't think there was any pressure from India to call an all-party conference.
Yeah.
Certainly the Indians, and not just the Indians, I think almost every country in the world that's interested in Sri Lanka, has been close to Sri Lanka, have been urging the government to talk to the TNA.
Yeah.
You found Victoria Nuland, Under Secretary of State, who was here 2 days ago. She said we welcome the fact that government is going to talk to the TNA. They didn't say anything about the APC. So the government TNA talks is a matter that most countries have been urging the government to have. I don't think there was any pressure to have an all-party conference.
You forgive me for being so suspicious, but you know, past record. All right. Now then, tell me, Mr. Sumanthiran, the former conflict areas, what is it really like there? Is there a lack of opportunity? Is there a lack of jobs, infrastructure? What's the level of frustration like?
All of that. You see, there is a lack of opportunity, lack of jobs. You see, one of the big problems that we have is lack of jobs, and that affects the youth as they qualify, as they come out, if they haven't got into universities, or even if they have got into universities and got a degree, thereafter they can't find jobs. So this is the mass exodus of young people that we have. COVID years, they haven't been able to go out, but otherwise it's a mass exodus. Everyone's objective is to get out of the country because you can't find jobs.
And would you say that it's more pronounced in the former conflict areas than
Yes, much more. Much more, because even government jobs are hard to come by. No industries, and so on. Infrastructure devastation, yes, all that had happened, but to some extent physical infrastructure was being rebuilt. The road network and so on have been done. The Indian housing, 50,000 houses, I think about 44,000 came to the north. So
and that's done and dusted. That's all.
That's done and dusted.
Okay.
But there have been other agencies also, like the OSAID, a number of others also have given housing related.
So how many houses do we need out there?
Well, we still need a fair number of houses. I couldn't give you a figure straight off. Just
I know
like
the
that.
Palinista government wanted 65,000.
Yeah, at that time, 3 times that number is what I thought was the requirement.
Oh, I see.
So, so that is still there. But some work has been done in respect of that. But it is the livelihood issues that are uppermost, and women-headed households, because the men have either died or disappeared or not there. Have given rise to whole host of other issues, financial, because she has to be employed, earn a living, look after the children, often aged parents. So, you know, she is like a machine, and then what she earns is a pittance. You know, all kinds of other social issues. So life is very, very difficult, to put it mildly, for those living in the former conflict areas.
And forgive my ignorance, but do you still find people living in temporary accommodation?
Yes, there are some people whose lands have not been released yet. In fact, that came up in the discussion today. The east side of the Palali airport, people have not been resettled. That land is available for resettlement, but for some reason the government is holding on to that, not allowing them to be resettled. They are in temporary accommodation elsewhere, and they have been in that kind of temporary accommodation for a few decades, hoping that one day they will get their land back.
Is that because it's declared a security zone, or?
Well, it was declared a high security zone some time ago, but now that has shrunk, and this strip and a few other areas are still being held. You know, this people being in temporary shelters is not just here. There are about 65,000 refugees from the north and east still in India, in welfare centers and refugee camps.
Any active steps to try and bring them
back? Yeah, we've done a lot of work trying to bring them back, but the problem is either their land here is still occupied by the military, so they can't come back to their land.
Can't they give compensation?
No compensation, then where are they to live? You see, they had to find a place when they have their own land, they have to build a house. Now priority is given in all housing projects to people who return from India. But that is not all. They have been away for 30 years. Then you can imagine how much advanced in years they will be now. Livelihood. I mean, it's not just a house and a land. How do you, live? So these are all issues that are preventing, people from returning. Even so, there are still a few thousand who have expressed their willingness to come back, but there are administrative snags, a whole lot of other issues. So we are still struggling 12 years after the war ended to bring back the refugees who are in India. Now with the economic crisis, 2 days ago we found 2 boatloads of people went and landed in India. One from Mana, one from Jaffna, saying that they are running away from starvation.
It's always amazed me that in spite of all these talks and so on, and even with the Prime Minister government and so on, that to date, you know, returning people from the north, who call the north the land of their birth, you know, when they come back, to travel from Colombo to there, they don't even have flights from Katunayaka. You know, you have to come back here, and the flights invariably are always full from here, from Ratmalana to the north.
Now, now there are no flights for that also. You have to charter a flight.
Right.
So then they have to travel by road.
Yeah.
Arduous, you know, journey.
Yes, actually.
It's 7 hours or so. Now the train service is fairly good.
Indeed.
But you know, it all takes time. So that is why Palali Airport was developed as an international airport. It was opened as such, and there were flights that first flights were between Chennai and Palali, and 3 days a week or something it started. We were going to, you know, develop it and go on. But COVID came, and when all airports were closed, that was closed. But other airports have been opened, but Palali has not been reopened yet.
What does that tell you? Is it symptomatic of I don't care?
Yes, we still don't have any good reason why that has not been reopened. The investors from South India, economic investors, would come if Palali is open. So we have made that point. I think the Indian government also has made that point to Sri Lankan government. And the latest I heard is that they will be reopening that very soon. But this long delay, as you say, is indicative of you know, reticence on their part to move these things forward.
And do you think that let's say I know the whole country is suffering with the economic conditions. Is it particularly harsh in the north?
Well, there are 2 strands to that. It's particularly harsh for the reason that anyway they were struggling economically for other reasons that we talked about earlier. So now this is an added burden. On the other hand, with regard to produce from their land and so on, they do have a slightly better advantage than a lot of the other places in the south. They are able to, you know, produce their own vegetables, paddy, etc. And the fishermen are able to, you know, make a catch, and they can determine the prices of those. And in order to survive, the northern and eastern economy has been largely a remittance economy. Because a lot of their relatives are abroad and they help and so on. Now, ironically, the dollar value going up or the rupee depreciating has actually been good for them, because they get more for the dollar that they are getting from their relatives. But having said that, the very poor who don't have people living outside, you know, the daily wage earner and all of that, are suffering immeasurably, and that's probably the reason why they're getting into boats and fleeing to India.
And do you think the patience of the people of the war, of the former conflict areas, is holding on?
Well, they'll be patient because there is no other option. They know the ill consequences of a war, and so they're not about to, you know, resort to anything else but peaceful agitation, if at all, if anything. But the youth, you know, who were 5 years and 10 years old at the time the conflict ended, are much older and adults now. they'll have not very fresh memories of the war years. And them getting frustrated is a very real possibility. So in fact that was also mentioned today at the talks, and we did not want it to sound like a threat or anything like that, but as you say, it's reality. I mean, the youth will
is reality.
Yeah, youth will lose patience. So that
we need
has
to be
mindful of that. Yes.
Mr. Sumanthiran, thank you very much for being on Newsline Live. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And that's the way it was on Newsline Live this evening. Take care. It's now time for the primetime news, and of course, as always, God bless you all.